want to say a few words on just the way things are developing in the last few days. It's been a very dramatic start, I think, to 2026. The Venezuela story is still the major story, but we're increasingly seeing real speculation that something could happen regarding Greenland. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard Trump talking about this over a year ago, I thought, okay, well, it's shocking, but it's typical Trump bombast. But he keeps bringing it up, and the White House itself has said that he's deadly serious about this. Mette Frederiksen of Denmark has said that he should be taken seriously as well. Um, what I find contemptible, utterly contemptible, is the Trump administration. And, it's easy to say Trump, 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 but it is the people around him as well. Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and others who are enabling this and who are absolutely complicit in it. Um, what we are seeing is an extraordinary situation where Trump is actually weakening the West, ironically. In his bid to make America great again, he is actually weakening the West collectively. What I mean by that is to have a NATO country threaten military action effectively against another NATO country is unparalleled. It's true there's been differences. It's true that there's been arguments, for example, between the United States and Turkey over the years, between the UK and Spain, between France and Italy. You could pick out any sort of disputes, but nothing comparable to a situation where two NATO countries have had a real chance of going to war. In fact, one of the main purposes of NATO was to provide peace and security within the West. It's the most powerful military alliance in history, and Trump is threatening it. What I find contemptible about that is that the winners will be China and Russia. They may have publicly protested about what happened in Venezuela, but I think the idea of NATO tearing itself apart will be music to their ears. And we're in a possibly a major turning point in history, and it all comes down to the direction of the American administration. The irony is they say that they need Greenland for security. Aside from the fact that the Indians have been working with them in that area, it's Donald Trump's pandering to Putin that has actually enabled Russia, not Europe. Trump's pandering to Putin. European leaders are meeting in Paris, and the other big development was that Britain and France have said that they will send troops in the event of a ceasefire in Ukraine. Now, I don't quite know what to think of that, because on one hand, I welcome any assertiveness in terms of, not letting Russia call the shots, but that's kind of the point. Russia clearly is never going to accept that. And I don't want to think of my compatriots being killed in a direct conflict with Russia. I don't want to think of anyone being killed, but the situation as we see it right now, recently, very recently, Zelensky sounded kind of optimistic. He said there's been progress in talks. Whether that's him being diplomatic or I don't know. There is actually a theory about what may be happening, and I've seen this floating around. I should say it is only a theory. It's not. There's nothing concrete about this, and it risks sounding like a conspiracy theory. But there is an unsettling thought, which is this: let's look at the world's three most powerful countries, effectively, which is the United States, China, and Russia. Russia has been weakened by the war in Ukraine. It's lost many, many, many of its men. Its economy's been hammered, but it is still a formidable force. I think it would be petty not to acknowledge that. So those are the world's three most powerful countries, arguably. What if there's been some sort of backroom deal whereby Putin and Xi have sort of said to Trump, you can have a free reign of the Western Hemisphere, and yet publicly they criticise what's happened in Venezuela. But honestly, given Trump's love of deals, what's to say he hasn't suggested Putin can therefore have a free reign in Europe, and Xi Jinping won't be opposed if he tries military action in Taiwan. I mean, this does sound like a conspiracy theory, but it's given Trump's contempt for international institutions, um, is it really that inconceivable? Is it really inconceivable that Trump might find it easier to do business with fellow demagogues like Xi Jinping and Putin than he would with Europeans? You have to wonder. And it's a very unsettling thought. In my last video, I said one good thing that's come out of Trumpism is it's forced Europeans to wake up a bit. If this escalates, I don't think there'll be actual violence between. I really can't see a situation where the United States and Danish armies are, a pitched warfare. I don't see that happening. But I do think if there's sort of an American military takeover of Greenland, there will be a massive diplomatic fallout. And one thing I'm absolutely adamant about, the United States must understand that it can't do this without some sort of consequences. By which I mean there needs to be a collective effort by Europeans, not just Denmark, but Europeans collectively to really push back against the United States. Recall American ambassadors, sanction Trump administration officials, make Trump himself persona non grata in Europe. Really, really make a statement that might doesn't equal right. That this philosophy that just by sheer American power it could do as it pleases has to be resisted. Because, individually European countries can't take on the United States, but collectively, I've said it before, if you look at the economies of Europe, combined they are bigger than the US. Militarily probably bigger as well, overall I'm talking about. But there has to be the willpower there. One of the problems we've had in Europe is there's too many European leaders who've taken this attitude, if we just pander to Trump, and our Prime Minister's among them, then it'll soften the blow, then we can get him on side. If his public life has shown us anything, it's that he's mercurial and unpredictable. He says one thing one day and does something the next day. Trump is highly unpredictable. So in that context, I think Starmer's right to have strong relations with France and Germany, but it goes beyond that. The continent as a whole needs to really get a grip on this. I'm not suggesting that we have a conflict with the United States, but if this happens, if there's some sort of military takeover of Greenland, the idea that, we don't approve of that, just words, would be utterly pathetic. And frankly, Europe would deserve to be laughed at if that is Europe's response. Europe would need to, I believe, sanctioning Trump administration officials, making a very frosty reception to the United States, no state visits for the foreseeable future, notch up trade deals, not necessarily with China, but other developing economies as a message to the United States, boycott certain American products. I'm realistic enough to know that won't work across the board, but really, I just don't think that such a situation should be left, with, a lot of MAGA Republicans sort of mock and scorn and say, what can Europe do? Well, if we're indecisive, then we can't do anything. I will also take this opportunity to say to my fellow Britons, those useful idiots who are cheering for Trump, you people are beyond pathetic in my opinion. The idea that you think that this man is somehow the answer to this country is just, I can't fathom that. It's either cowardice, because you think, we better not provoke America, or it's just sheer stupidity. What happened when Starmer had that state visit? That was by definition pandering to Trump, and it backfired. A lot of the trade deals fell through. So I think we have to be realistic. There's 3 more years of Trump. He could try anything. I'm not suggesting that we deliberately seek to be provocative, but what is unacceptable is that Trump is given a green light to do as he pleases. Particularly when threatening a fellow NATO member. I think it is treasonous towards the West. Now, people might argue, how can it be treason when the West is a geographical term rather than an individual country? But there has long been an understanding of shared Western values. If the United States under the current president is dismantling that, with his belligerence, then really that compromises a whole lot. I think it was Mette Frederiksen in Paris who said that NATO as we know it will no longer exist, this concept of a transatlantic alliance. Now, I don't know about that. Having the biggest member leave or, violate NATO principles, does that mean NATO ends? The EU didn't end because the UK left it. But honestly, if the US left NATO, it would definitely be something. I do think, though, there could be statements of solidarity. For example, I think European countries can send out goodwill gestures to the presidents of Mexico and Colombia. Not overtly to provoke Trump, but just to say this is between two nation states. I just think that for too long, Trump has bullied his way around, and his supporters have been led to believe that might is right because of American power, it could do as it pleases. And I know there are many decent Americans who oppose this. So this is not about being anti-American, as in against the American people. Although I do think that everyone who voted for Trump should take responsibility for putting him back into power. I have a dim view of those who are now saying, oh, if we knew then what we knew now, what we know now. You did know. You did know. So anyone who regrets voting for Trump, you were warned. You had your opportunities, but you said it was all fake news. You could have even went for a third party candidate, but you put that man back into the White House. Anyway, I just think these are extraordinary developments. And anyone who wants to justify Trump's hostility towards another NATO country, it's contemptible. I mean, you have to just listen to the State Department. It's what we want. It's always, they don't even hide it. In the past, America always used its hegemony in a slightly bullying way, but at least in the past, there was a veneer of diplomacy. There was a veneer of a sort of facade of altruistic reasons for what America done. Now we have a situation where the Trump administration and its senior officials are openly saying, this is all about us. It's what we want. The hell with everyone else. Rubio openly admitted Venezuela is good for us. And by the way, it's good for the Venezuelan people as well, except they're throwing the opposition under the bus. So anyway, it's just an extraordinary, the last week has been extraordinary, some of the things that have developed. I don't think that we're going to see American military action in Greenland tomorrow or next week, maybe even not this month, but I think it will come sooner than later. I think Trump's deadly serious. He's not going to back down, and Europe now needs to be looking at a response. And it's just a horrendous situation because, like I say, it's music for Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. The irony is Trump thinks he's making America stronger, but by weakening the West, he's also actually weakening America. He's certainly costing its popularity. The poll on my channel, most respondents said that the United States under Trump is more unpopular, not more respected in the world. But MAGA Republicans live in a bubble. They think that because America's kind of feared, then it's respected. But it's the respect of a schoolyard bully. Is that true respect? I don't think it is.